Paying off debt is a difficult task, especially if you only pay the bare minimum each month. It's common to have to expedite payments in order to get free and clear. The Debt Avalanche approach and the Debt Snowball method are two separate ways for settling outstanding accounts in this manner. While both are effective techniques for getting out of debt, one may be easier to keep to and have a greater impact on your finances. At the end of this video, you should have a clear idea of which debt repayment strategy is ideal for you. Let's get into it. Debt Avalanche versus Debt Snowball, an overview. Both Debt Avalanche and Debt Snowball apply to most types of consumer debt: personal, student and auto loans, credit card balances, and medical bills. They don't work with mortgage payments and shouldn't be tried with them. Each technique requires you to compile a list of all your debts and make minimum payments on all but one. You put additional money into that one with the goal of wiping it out first. Once it's gone, you move on to another loan. The additional money you put towards it may equal the minimum payment you had to make on the previous obligation. The two techniques differ in terms of which debt you target first. You pay more money towards the debt with the highest interest rate in the Debt Avalanche technique. You pay off the smallest debt first and work your way up with the Debt Snowball approach, regardless of the interest rate. Let's take a closer look at each method, weighing the benefits and drawbacks of the Debt Snowball and Debt Avalanche. Then we'll go through some unique concerns for dealing with debt. Debt Avalanche. The Debt Avalanche approach involves making minimum payments on all of your outstanding accounts, then utilizing any remaining money set aside for your debts to pay off the bill with the highest interest rate. You will save the most money on interest payments if you use the Debt Avalanche approach. For example, if you have $3,000 more each month to put toward debts reduction, the Debt Avalanche technique will get you the most bang for your buck. Assume you owe the following amounts: $10,000 credit card debt at 18.99% annual percentage rate APR, $9,000 car loan at 3% interest rate, and a $15,000 student loan at 4.50% interest rate. The Avalanche approach would have you pay off your credit card debt first, then allow you to pay off the remainder of your debt in 11 months, for a total of $1,011.60 in interest. The Snowball technique would have you tackle the vehicle loan first, paying $1,514.97 in interest, and becoming debt-free in 11 months. You may save hundreds of dollars in interest just by rearranging your bills. The Avalanche technique can also cut the time it takes to pay off debt by a few months for people who have a lot of it. Pros and cons of the Debt Avalanche method. The Debt Avalanche technique can save you hundreds of dollars in interest payments just by altering the sequence in which you pay off your debts. The Avalanche approach can also shorten the time it takes to pay off bigger sums of debt by a few months for those with higher amounts of debt. Although the Debt Avalanche approach is the most effective way to save money and time, it does have drawbacks. It mostly necessitates discipline, paying off a specific obligation with all of your excess allotted funds, rather than simply the minimum. If you lose drive and miss a month or two of targeted repayments, the Debt Avalanche will not be as effective. The Debt Avalanche method also implies that you have a certain amount of disposable income that you can use to pay down your obligations. An increase in everyday living expenditures or an emergency might put the plan into jeopardy. Debt Snowball. The Debt Snowball strategy is paying off the smaller bills first to get them out of the way before moving on to larger ones, a sort of do the easy stuff first approach. You make a list of all your outstanding debts in ascending order of magnitude. You focus on paying off the first one first, putting as much additional money into each payment as you can. On the others, you only pay the bare minimum. When the initial loan is paid off, the extra payment treatment is applied to the next lowest obligation. Example of a Debt Snowball. Let's look at our prior debt scenario to understand how the snowball effects works. To summarize, you have $3,000 more each month to dedicate to debt reduction, and you have the following: $10,000 credit card debt at 18.99% annual percentage rate APR, $9,000 car loan at 3% interest rate, and a $15,000 student loan at 4.50% interest rate. Because you owe the least amount of money on the auto loan, you should focus on it first, according to the Snowball approach. You'd finish it in just 3 months and then move on to the other 2. You'd be debt-free in roughly 11 months, just like with the Debt Avalanche approach. However, you would have paid an additional $500 in interest, totaling $1,514.97. Pros and cons of the Debt Snowball method. It's difficult to feel enthusiastic about paying off debt, and it's even more difficult if you don't seem to be making any progress. Without a sense of progress, you may be tempted to give up too soon. According to Dave Ramsey, a proponent of the snowball approach and a personal finance expert and talk show presenter, our need for quick satisfaction is what makes it so successful. The math seems to lean more towards paying the highest interest debts first, he allows. But what I've learned is that personal finance is 20% head knowledge and 80% behavior. You need some quick wins in order to stay pumped enough to get out of debt completely. The primary benefit of the Debt Snowball approach is that it aids in the development of motivation. Because you see quick results, for example, fully erasing certain outstanding amounts in only a few months, you're more likely to stay with the strategy. After all, that mountain of debt doesn't appear to be so insurmountable. It's also simple to implement. You don't have to compare interest rates or APRs. Simply look at each amount you owe. The Debt Snowball's major disadvantage is that it might be more expensive in the long run. You may wind up paying more in interest as a result of prioritizing balances above APRs. Depending on the nature of the loans and how frequently the interest on them compounds, getting fully debt-free and clear may take longer. Special considerations. Both the Snowball and Avalanche methods are examples of accelerated debt repayment programs, which are strategies to pay off your debts faster by paying more than the minimum monthly amount. Of course, both imply that you can afford to set aside more cash on a regular basis to pay down your debt. If your income is inconsistent or uncertain, or if you believe you may be laid off soon, you should keep to paying the minimum payments. If you're using one of these techniques to pay off credit card debt, be sure the cards you are using aren't the ones you plan to use for future purchases. It's apparent that you can't pay off a bill if you keep adding to it. Finally, unique situations with specific debts may need a change in your payback schedule. Let's pretend you signed up for an 18-month 0% interest credit card and used it to buy a cutting-edge PC with all the bells and whistles. Regardless of your debt repayment strategy, you'll want to pay the sum off before the special promotional rate period ends, regardless of how it compares to your other payments. Otherwise, you'll just be adding to your existing pile of interest-bearing debt. The key takeaways to remember from this topic are: Debt Avalanche and Debt Snowball are two different forms of debt payback strategies. Making minimum payments on all debts, then utilizing any excess cash to pay down the obligation with the highest interest rate is the Debt Avalanche technique, and making minimum payments on all bills, then paying off the lowest debts before moving on to larger ones is the Debt Snowball approach. The bottom line is, if you're serious about getting out of debt, figure out which strategy is ideal for you based on your circumstances and personality. The most effective approach is one that you can stick to. Stick with the Debt Snowball approach if you require additional motivation to pay off the debt. You might prefer the Debt Avalanche strategy if spending money to interest payments instead of principal payments drive you crazy. You may even utilize both approaches at the same time. To begin, choose a debt that is relatively modest yet has the highest interest rate. Figure out which method is best for you depending on your circumstances and personality if you're serious about getting out of debt. The most effective strategy is the one you should stick to. It's even possible to use both methods at the same time. To begin, select a debt that is little yet has a high interest rate. That's it for Debt Snowball versus Debt Avalanche. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.